They were the darlings of the heavens, possessing innate magic. Upon the awakening of their talents, they wielded the power to take on 100 foes single-handedly. They were called the Grisha, and they possessed a long lifespan. As the number of Grisha grew, the king sensed a threat and ordered their widespread capture, intending to use them for his own purposes. Those who resisted were met with brutal slaughter. Despite their attempts to hide, they were still found by the army. Thinking of his wife, who had been killed by soldiers not long ago, he recklessly used an ancient forbidden art. The forbidden art exceeded his capacity, and he completely lost control. Dark magic shot straight into the sky, spreading rapidly, leaving behind death and desolation in its wake. The entire continent was directly split in two, and the black curtain that severed North-South Passage was thus born. Lena also lost her parents as a result and became an orphan. The elders of the orphanage told her when she was very young, if you didn't want to die on the battlefield, you had to learn cartography. This was a country constantly plagued by war and food shortages. Whether male or female, as soon as they reached adulthood, they had to go to the battlefield. Only cartographers had the least risky profession. Cartographers were responsible for creating detailed maps for the soldiers. Mal was her only friend in the orphanage. The two took care of and relied on each other. After growing up and becoming a cartographer, she came to the military camp. Seeing the fold up close for the first time filled her with awe. Legend had it that only a saint who could summon the sun could dispel the darkness. Upon learning that Lena had also come to the military camp, Mal rushed over. The two, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, were overjoyed. Just as they were pouring their hearts out to each other, soldiers training nearby caught their attention. They were Grisha warriors belonging to the Second Army. They were a wind caller and an inferni. In the military camp, the Second Army held a special status. They could enjoy an endless supply of food and comfortable tents. Ordinary soldiers like Mal, on the other hand, often went hungry due to food shortages. Soon, the officer announced a mission. The Second Army would cross the fold to search for supplies, and they needed some ordinary soldiers to help transport them back. Hearing the mission, the soldiers instantly fell silent. Everyone knew this mission was exceptionally dangerous. Very few people could cross the fold completely unharmed. Unfortunately, Mal's name was on the list. Not wanting to be separated from Mal, Lena sneaked into the military camp and burned the northern maps. Upon learning that the maps had been destroyed, the officer ordered the cartographers to go along and redraw them. Lena got her wish and boarded the skiff. The wind caller used his power to fill the sails. The skiff slowly accelerated and plunged into the fold. Inside the fold, it was pitch black, with lightning flashing all around. Suddenly, a dark shadow streaked across the sky, and everyone tensed up, entering combat mode. A soldier fearfully lit an oil lamp. The Grisha noticed and hurriedly told him to put it out, but it was too late. A large monster appeared and snatched him away. The fallen oil lamp ignited, and more monsters appeared, constantly grabbing soldiers. Just then, Mal was also grabbed by a monster. Reacting quickly, Lena grabbed a rifle and fired, successfully saving Mal. Just as she was checking Mal's injuries, a monster suddenly appeared from behind and grabbed her. In a critical moment, a burst of light suddenly radiated from her body, illuminating the surroundings. The monsters were instantly torn apart by the light. The skiff burst out of the fold. The soldiers had suffered heavy losses from the monster attack. The wind caller had no choice but to steer the skiff back the way they came. Lena and Mal were both injured and fell unconscious. After Mal woke up, he was taken away by soldiers from the First Army. The wind caller hurriedly called for a healer to come and treat them. Soon, Lena's broken collarbone was healed. Afterward, she was taken by guards to the general. At this time, she still didn't know what had happened. General Kirigan asked her who she was. Lena was a little overwhelmed by the question. She honestly replied that she was a cartographer. But when the surrounding crowd heard her answer, they all laughed in unison. Realizing that she was truly unaware, Kirigan took off the ring on his hand and slowly walked up to her. Kirigan gently made a cut on her arm, and suddenly a beam of light shot out from her wound. The light grew brighter and brighter, reaching the top of the tent, and everyone looked up in shock at this scene. The beam of light instantly pierced through the tent and shot into the sky, attracting the attention of all the soldiers in the camp. Lena herself was also terrified by the beam of light, her face filled with disbelief. Mal, outside the tent, understood after seeing the light beam that from now on, Lena and he would belong to different worlds. Legend had it that the Sun Summoner possessed the power to completely eliminate the fold. Therefore, when Lena unleashed her power, she would be nurtured as the nation's savior. Ravka was a nation with its passage severed by the fold. The western coastal lands were also showing a tendency towards independence. To the north lay the perpetually frozen ice mountains. To the south bordered the kingdom of Shuhan. Circumnavigating it required a journey of up to 5 months. Upon learning that she was to go to the royal palace for training and life, Lena was unwilling to part with Mal and wanted to refuse. But at this point, it was no longer up to her. Once her talent was exposed, she would face countless assassinations. Lena was forcibly taken onto a carriage by the guards. To ensure Lena's safety, the military camp dispatched Grisha warriors as escorts. Not long after they set off, the road was blocked. Just as the soldiers went forward to investigate, a sharp arrow shot over, instantly killing 2 ordinary soldiers. Seeing this, 2 Grisha warriors got out of the carriage to provide support. And under Kirigan's protection, the 2 rode away on horseback. During a break on their journey, she learned from Kirigan that the hostile nation of Fjerda had already learned of the sun summoner Lena and had dispatched a large number of assassins into the country to eliminate Lena before she could grow stronger. After a long journey, the 2 finally arrived at the gate of the royal palace. Led by a guard, Lena arrived at her own room. Looking at the luxurious surroundings before her, she couldn't help but cry bitterly. Having lost her parents at a young age and possessing the appearance of a Shuhan person, she had faced discrimination and oppression everywhere, often being bullied and sometimes not even having enough to eat. Carrying the memories of the past, Lena fell asleep in the soft bedding. A stag with giant antlers suddenly appeared, turning its head to look over. This scene startled Lena awake from her dream. Before she could react, a group of uniformly dressed servants walked in and took her into the bathroom without explanation. The Grisha tailor, Genya, told her that the king had summoned her, so she needed to hurry and tidy herself up. Genya was a tailor with the power to heal wounds and alter appearances. With her help, Lena's wounds healed instantly. Then, led by Kirigan, the 2 arrived at the palace. Kirigan used his power to block the light in the Great Hall. He took Lena's hand and activated her power. The entire hall was instantly enveloped in a scorching light, and everyone was shocked by the scene before them. The Sun Summoner's identity was finally confirmed, and Lena began a new life. At the same time, in a prosperous city west of the Fold, there was a place called Ketterdam. This place boasted developed commercial trade. In a tavern, a drunkard was exposed for using counterfeit money. Fearless of everything else, his only fear was his boss. The boss, Kaz Brecker, ran this bar and also had under his command a shadowy figure named Inej Gaffa. Inej's throwing knife skills were unparalleled. She specialized in intelligence gathering and tracking. News of the Sun Summoner's birth quickly reached this place. A top-tier wealthy merchant was looking for someone who could cross the Fold. His goal was to take Lena for himself. He offered a reward of up to 1,000,000 krug. The enormous reward made Kaz's heart stir, but the immediate problem was how to cross the Fold. The 3 of them discussed and dismissed many methods. After much inquiry, they still couldn't get any definite information. Just as he was at his wit's end, a woman counting money at a poker table caught his attention. He gave his subordinate a look, and the woman was brought to his office. Her habit of counting money made him realize that she was not a local, but rather from East Ravka, on the other side of the Fold. He wanted to know how an ordinary person had crossed the Fold to get here. Under his persistent questioning, he finally got a clue. Following the clue, he and his men went over. But when he arrived, the scene before him surprised him. At this moment, his own subordinate, Inej, had a knife to the other person's throat.
Don't!
Not long ago, the old proprietor of the menagerie found Inej and gave her an assassination mission. He promised that upon completion of the assassination, he would grant her freedom. When Inej was young, she encountered thugs, and her parents were brutally murdered. She was sold to the menagerie, a place of ill repute. Fortunately, she was noticed by Kaz Brecker, the leader of the Dregs, who bought her freedom. However, the ransom was substantial, and she had yet to fully repay her debt and regain her freedom. For the sake of freedom, Inej accepted the mission and, following the clues, found the target's location. Just as she was about to deliver the killing blow, Boss Kaz arrived and stopped her, and from him, she learned the method to cross the Fold. This person was named Arkan, who made a living by using his ability to traverse the Fold. After the group discussed and agreed, they purchased the necessary materials for the journey. Led by Arkan, they arrived at his secret location. They watched as he fumbled around and pulled a train out from within the Fold. The group boarded the train, and Arkan placed the prepared prepared materials inside. After the train started, it plunged into the fold. The group was uneasy on the way. Arkin reassured them, saying he had traveled through it many times and there was nothing to worry about. But just as he was boastfully bragging about himself, a sudden roar sounded. He hurriedly pushed the train's engine to full power, trying to accelerate out. But more and more monsters appeared, and the roof of the train was already dented from the impacts. Just when the situation was critical, Matthias Helvar stood up and walked out. He closed his eyes, carefully listening to locate the source of the sound. On the other side, Lena was living happily, training in the royal palace. Not only was there an endless supply of delicious food here, but there were also people specifically assigned to take care of her daily life. Her Grisha teacher was very strict with her. She would be punished for even the slightest mistake. No matter how hard she tried, her abilities showed no signs of improvement. The teacher gave her a special potion to drink, which sent her into the memories of her childhood to find the reason why her talent was being suppressed. In an instant, she seemed to return to the past, becoming an outsider looking in. It was the day she and Mal were planning to escape the orphanage. This day was when all the children would undergo talent testing. Once talent was detected, they would be taken away for special training. Lena was worried about being separated from Mal, so she chose to escape the orphanage before the test. But she accidentally broke a porcelain item, drawing attention. They still couldn't avoid being tested. Mal was denied testing by the examiner because of his injury. When it was Lena's turn, she clutched the shard of porcelain in her hand. Using the pain to stimulate herself, she avoided her talent being detected. She successfully got through it and was determined to have no talent. They were not separated as they had wished. Because she didn't want to possess talent in her heart, it caused her talent to not develop for a long time after awakening. As time went on, under Kirigan's deliberate approach, Lena slowly developed some affection for him, and Lena had written many letters to Mal, but none had been returned. Finally, she decided to let go of her attachment to the past. This finally allowed her talent to break through, but what she didn't know was that all of this was actually a conspiracy. Mal, who had been sent to the front lines in the military camp, had sent many letters but had not received any replies. Having not been able to contact Lena for a long time, he was very worried. The officer took out a hand-drawn picture and announced the latest mission. The superior's order was to find a stag in the picture, and Mal, who was currently worried about Lena, recognized it at a glance. This was the stag Lena had drawn many times before. Hearing the requirement that it had to be a living stag, the soldiers couldn't help but laugh. This was a mythical beast that only existed in legends. They thought the general must have lost his mind, but at this moment Mal stepped forward voluntarily. Thus, Mal and two teammates embarked on their journey to find the stag. Heading north, they went into the sparsely populated dense forest. Relying on the droppings left by animals, he quickly found traces of the deer herd. After days of searching, they crossed the mountains and entered the frozen tundra. Further north lay the border of the enemy nation, Fjerda. But having spent so much time already, none of the three were willing to give up. The group pressed on against the wind and snow, and unbeknownst to him, the person he was constantly thinking of had let go of her past attachments and was now exchanging sweet nothings with General Kirigan. Deep in the night, the three set up camp. Suddenly, an unusual sound caught Mal's attention. Just as he went to investigate, his teammate behind him was attacked by enemy soldiers. After a struggle, the three of them worked together to eliminate the enemies. At this moment, a sound in the distance caught Mal's attention. He slowly walked over, but before he could see clearly, he was met with a burst of machine gun fire from enemy soldiers. Mal was hit by several bullets and fell to the ground, unconscious. In his dazed state, he recalled when Lena first came to the military camp. She had been put in confinement for arguing with an officer. After hearing the news, he found the officer and stood up for Lena. Subsequently, he was also locked up. They met in the prison. She had once relied on the pain from the porcelain shard in her hand to avoid detection during the talent testing, all so she wouldn't be separated from him. He had also unhesitatingly stepped forward when she was bullied, leaving scars on his hand. Neither had ever confessed their feelings, always just supporting each other. At this moment, the screams of his companion instantly jolted him awake. Mal snatched the enemy's sidearm and eliminated the two soldiers. But by this time, his two teammates had already been brutally killed. Just as he was overcome with grief, a stag emerged from the woods, looking at him from afar. Just moments ago, Arkan and the others had crossed the fold without serious incident. The group rested briefly in a tavern to formulate a plan. Their target was to go to the Grand Palace and kidnap Lena, but the palace was heavily guarded, making entry extremely difficult. Soon, Boss Kaz returned with crucial information. The palace blueprints were stored in the royal archives. After discussing, Kaz, disguised as a master sculptor, went to the archives. He gained trust under the guise of designing statues for the palace. While the curator went to retrieve the blueprints, he surreptitiously dropped a phosphorus-coated piece of paper at the curator's feet. He left a trail of glowing markings to locate where the blueprints were stored. Matthias, disguised as a security guard, infiltrated the palace at night and turned off the lights in the blueprint storage area. When the lights went out, the agile Inej rappelled down from the roof, following the glowing markings on the floor. She found the blueprints. She then made a copy of the blueprints using special ink. Just as she succeeded and was about to leave, the lights suddenly turned back on. With Matthias's help, Inej successfully retrieved the copy. The three met up and left smoothly. Looking at the design blueprints in front of them, the group was perplexed. The security design of the entire palace was very tight. Just then, a performer behind them fell. It turned out that all of this was deliberately orchestrated by Arkan. He had learned that a circus troupe would be performing at an upcoming palace gathering. Now that a lead performer had fallen and there was a need for a replacement, everyone unanimously looked at Inej. Helpless, Inej had no choice but to remove the daggers she carried. Under Inej's flawless and graceful performance, all the spectators in the tavern were completely captivated. Soon after, the winter fete officially began in the palace. Those who could attend were all nobles and royalty. The group successfully infiltrated the palace by posing as circus performers. At this time, Genya was helping Lena with her makeup in the palace. She would attend in grand attire as the Sun Summoner. Meanwhile, Kaz and the others had already finalized their plan. Arkan would go to abduct Lena, Inej would be responsible for the performance to draw attention, and Matthias would be in charge of finding a carriage for escape. But unexpectedly, just as Matthias was looking for horses, a handsome stable boy caught his attention. The two fell in love at first sight. At the same time, Lena was invited onto the performance stage at the banquet. Under General Kirigan's guidance, Lena displayed her power to the crowd. The crowd unanimously performed a deep bow, calling out, "Saint Lena!" On the other side, Arkan snuck into Lena's room through the back door. He didn't kidnap Lena. Instead, he chose to kill the Lena before him. Genya rushed in upon hearing the noise, but Arkan fled quickly. The girl's injuries were too severe for Genya to heal. At her request, Genya restored her true appearance. This person was merely a decoy for Lena. The gunshot attracted a large number of guards, and Arkan failed to escape and was captured. Kaz had long suspected that Arkan had another deal with someone else, so he deliberately let him be in charge of the kidnapping, allowing him to walk into a trap. Meanwhile, news of Mal finding the stag had reached the palace. General Kirigan and Mal officially met. Upon learning that Mal had indeed found the stag, Kirigan hurriedly took the map and asked him to pinpoint the location. But Mal insisted on seeing Lena first before revealing the information. Kirigan had no choice but to agree and asked him to wait there. On the other side, a guard, seeing Mal and his companions arrive, quickly reported to Lena's teacher, Baghra. Upon learning that Mal had brought news of the stag, Baghra's expression turned grave, and she instructed the guard to do something. Mal, while waiting, was found by this guard and subsequently led to an underground chamber. Meanwhile, after the banquet ended, Kaz and Inej successfully approached Lena. But just as they were about to trick Lena into leaving with them, Kirigan suddenly appeared and took Lena away, disrupting their plan. The two arrived in the room and were about to get intimate when a knock on the door suddenly sounded. A guard reported that Lena's decoy had been murdered. There was an assassin in the palace, and Kirigan had to go deal with it. No sooner had Kirigan left than Lena's teacher, Baghra, suddenly appeared. She directly led Lena into a secret passage and told her the true purpose and identity of General Kirigan. It turned out that Kirigan was the Darkling who had created the Fold. Back then, after losing control of the ancient forbidden art he used, he suffered a backlash. To evade pursuit, he adopted the identity of a noble to conceal himself. After hundreds of years of recuperation and effort, he finally became a general of the Empire. He intended to expand the Fold and use it as his weapon, but after many years of trying, he had failed, until Lena's appearance gave him a method. But no matter how Baghra explained, Lena, lost in her feelings, refused to believe it. It wasn't until Baghra displayed her own power that Lena finally believed. Baghra, who also possessed the dark power, was actually General Kirigan's mother. Only at this moment did Lena finally understand that the sweet words Kirigan had spoken were merely to keep her firmly under his control. Baghra instructed her to hide in the secret chamber for a while, where provisions had been arranged. But in the end, Lena did not choose to enter the chamber but escaped from the secret passage. She no longer trusted anyone in the palace. Coincidentally, the carriage box she hid in happened to be the very carriage Matthias had prepared for their escape. This astonished Matthias, who was watching secretly. Subsequently, Kaz and Inej, having failed, walked over.
Just ask.
Do we have a fix on where the target is?
Lena, hiding in the box, found a magnifying glass and used her power to focus the light through it, melting the lock. But when she opened the box, she discovered that Kaz and his companions had been waiting for a long time. They wanted to keep Lena and exchange her for the high reward. But when Lena unleashed her power, they had no choice but to let her leave. After leaving, Lena was pondering where to go when she accidentally bumped into a soldier. When the soldier saw her Shuhan features, he became aggressive. She had no choice but to fight back, using her power to eliminate him. But this exposed her whereabouts and attracted the pursuit of soldiers. Lena had to run all the way and hide in a valley. Just as she felt the soldiers had left, Mal silently appeared behind her. After a long separation, the two were finally reunited. Ever since Lena disappeared from the palace, Mal had been searching for her traces, finally finding her after this exposure. Lena was still resentful that Mal hadn't replied to her letters for months. After they shared their experiences with each other, they understood the misunderstandings that had occurred. Finally, they embraced and reconciled. On the other side, as Lena's whereabouts were exposed, General Kirigan also received the news and rushed over. At this time, in the valley, Lena was still tending to Mal's injuries as before. From Mal, she learned about the stag. Lena recalled learning about the First Army Grisha in the palace. To gain more power, the First Army Grisha would hunt mythical beasts and incorporate them into their own bodies. And General Kirigan's order to find the stag was for the same reason. They immediately decided that they must find the stag before Kirigan did. Subsequently, led by Mal, they successfully found the stag's location. In her dreams, Lena had repeatedly seen the stag. She felt that hunting the stag to gain power was not the right way. The stag noticed them and slowly walked over. Lena reached out and touched the stag, and a miraculous scene unfolded. A curtain of light enveloped the two of them. Just then, a sharp arrow suddenly struck the stag. It was General Kirigan's guard who had tracked them down. She broke the arrow and pulled it out of Mal's body, but then she was captured by the guards. At this moment, Kirigan appeared and cleaved the stag in two. Kirigan promised Lena that if she went with him, he would heal Mal. Lena had no choice but to be taken away. In the military camp, a fabricator fused a piece of the stag's antler into Lena's body. The other piece was fused into the back of Kirigan's hand. From then on, Kirigan possessed the ability to control Lena's power. Subsequently, influential figures all received invitations from Kirigan to witness the upcoming grand event within the fold. At this time, Kaz and his companions also received the news. After discussing, they decided to deal with the attendees at night, impersonate them to attend the event, and take the opportunity to cross the fold. The next day, the group arrived at the military camp and successfully passed the inspection. They mingled with the crowd and successfully boarded the skiff. Soon, the skiff set off and plunged into the fold. Kaz and his group took advantage of an unguarded moment and went down to the hold. By this time, the skiff had already entered the depths of the fold. Watching the monsters in the fold multiply, Lena didn't understand why Kirigan was delaying destroying the fold. Instead, he used Lena's power to create a safe passage. In the hold, Kaz and his companions were discussing their next move. Suddenly, Inej seemed to notice something. It turned out to be Mal, who had been hiding there all along. After learning Mal's identity, Kaz didn't make things difficult for him. Kirigan on the skiff finally revealed his true purpose at this moment. He wanted to turn the fold into his weapon to rule the entire continent. People on the other side of the fold were already waiting to witness the grand event of the fold's eradication. Just then, the skiff passed through the fold and stopped. Kirigan unleashed his power, continuously expanding the fold outwards. The crowd outside the fold frantically fled upon seeing this. At this moment, Mal suddenly burst out of the hold, wanting to save Lena, but outnumbered, he was quickly controlled by the Heartrenders. Then Matthias and the others from the hold also rushed out to provide support. Kirigan tried to persuade Lena to cooperate with him to rule the continent. Taking advantage of Kirigan's moment of carelessness, Lena stabbed the stag's antler in his hand. Regaining her freedom, she fully integrated the antler's power into her body. Just as Kirigan reacted and was about to attack, Mal beside him lunged forward and fell off the skiff with Kirigan. The two exchanged blows with their fists below the skiff. Lena on the skiff was about to go forward to help but was controlled by a shadow summoner, causing her to lose consciousness. Without Lena's control, the barrier of light disappeared directly. At a critical moment, Matthias arrived and saved Lena. Mal below the skiff was no match for Kirigan and was beaten to the ground. Just as Kirigan was about to deliver the final blow, a monster flew over and knocked Kirigan down. Mal seized the opportunity to run back to the skiff. At this moment, the unconscious Lena finally woke up to Mal's calls. The few survivors successfully emerged from the fold. They were able to survive because of Lena. Therefore, Kaz abandoned his plan to kidnap Lena. Lena promised to return and eliminate the fold after her power increased. But what they didn't know was that Kirigan was not only alive, but had struggled out of the fold, bringing with him even greater power.